Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. We're getting awfully close to the 160th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And so I thought I would talk about a soldier who was also a photographer. We had a request recently from one of our viewers to feature some of those photographs. So this is sort of a combination of the two. So let's begin with the photograph. It's a really great image of a photographer taken in the 1864 to 1865 range. Check out what he's posed with here. If you look closely, you'll see all of the tools of his trade. First, the camera that he's leaning a hand upon, that's a full sliding box model, which was popular from the Daguerrean era. That's 1839 to around 1861. And that camera was also used through the 1870s. If you look on top of the camera, you'll see some bottles, a brush, and a cup, which was likely used for coloring images. In the foreground, that larger machine looking device is a burnishing machine. It was a hand cranked roller that was used to press albumin photographs. The result of the burnisher gave them a high gloss finish. Now, also on display, you'll see some examples of the man's work: an albumin print mounted in an oval frame, and two carte de visite images. Great image. If you were a collector of photography, you would definitely put this in the category of an occupational, which is true. This image is also a Civil War soldier because the man is identified. His name is Albert Harwood, Albert William Harwood, to be exact. Born in 1839, he was a son, one of 9 children in a Vermont farm family who left home when he was young and became a photographer in partnership with another photographer. And then he eventually became the sole owner of the gallery. All of this in Windsor, Vermont. That is until the summer of 1862, when he decided to step out from behind the lens and step into the Civil War as a soldier. He joined a local unit, the Saxton's River Light Infantry, which became Company I of the 12th Vermont Infantry. This is again in the summer of 1862, and he joined in for a 9-month enlistment, so 9 months in uniform. And if you do the math, we're looking at into the summer of 1863. Now, during his service, his record is completely spotless, no blemishes, only one note on his record. And that is during the very last days of his enlistment at Gettysburg, he suffered a shell wound in his leg. Now, I did a little research after finding this tidbit in his military service record to find out more about the 12th Vermont and where they were at Gettysburg. So I was quite surprised at first to read that the 12th was on detached duty during the engagement. They were in the back, off the front lines, guarding trains, all the wagon trains with all the supplies of the First Corps. So they were only days away from mustering out of the army and close to the battle, but not exactly in it. So you might wonder, well, how was that he came to be wounded? How did he get a shell wound in the leg? Well, we don't exactly have that information, but the state historian of Vermont gives us some tantalizing clues. The historian says that the 12th accompanied the wagon trains to the vicinity of Rock Creek Church near the battlefield. From that point, companies B and G, Captains Paul and Ormsby, were sent forward as guard for a portion of the ammunition train to a point on the Tawnytown Road on the outskirts of the field, where they remained during the fighting of the 3rd day of the battle. Other members of the regiment on detached service participated in the battle. So we know that Albert Harwood served in Company I. Companies B and G were part of the battle, and other members of the regiment who happened to be on detached service also participated. So it is easy to summarize here, to theorize that Harwood, he wasn't in companies B or G, he was in company I. So he may have been one of those men who was on detached service and was too close to the battle. And since we're talking about July 3rd, it could very well have been that he was caught up in the action of the bombardment before Pickett's charge. Now, it's also possible that an errant shell fired from somewhere, could have been an enemy shell, could be friendly fire, hit him in the leg. These are details that we don't know. But it's interesting to understand that regiments who were in the Civil War, when you look up their records in the beginning, it might look like that in big battles like Gettysburg, they were off in the distance and not involved. And technically it's true, but two companies and other men from the regiment were involved. So got to check those records closely. So you may wonder what happened to Harwood. He survived his wound. He mustered out with his comrades on July 14th, 1863, just 11 days after the battle. He married, and guess what? He moved to Brunswick, Georgia, going down south. There he opened a photographic gallery and a jewelry business. His life in the South lasted about 7 years when yellow fever gripped the community. It prompted him and his wife, Lucy, to return to the North. There's a little note from Harwood, who later makes a bit of a joke about his departure from Georgia. He says, quote, "We left the dinner on the stove, and so far as I know, it is still there, as we never went back." He added, quote, "A large number of deaths from the fever occurred here." So Harwood did not note the date, but I suspect it was an epidemic of yellow fever that struck Brunswick in 1876 and resulted in more than 100 townspeople who died from disease. After that time, back in New England, Harwood worked for his remaining years in paper mills in Vermont, New Hampshire, New York. He operated a photo gallery, returned to business in the photo world in North Adams, Massachusetts. He eventually retired and made violins as a hobby. In 1938, at age 99, he was a popular veteran, one of the last remaining veterans at that time. And he was asked about his age. How does somebody live that long? And his reply was, quote, "I think plenty of hard work and plenty to eat is the secret of my long life." So if you're looking to live long, hard work and eating right, try that. A year later, in 1939, he died. His wife survived him, and he survived his wife, who passed in 1926. So there you have it, the story of a Civil War veteran who was wounded at Gettysburg. He was also a photographer by profession. So we'll see you next time on a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.